Hello, my name's Gary Ford, Managing Director of Tiger Hobbies Limited, UK Hobby Imports and Distributors, and welcome to episode 7 of the rest of the war in Europe. You may have noticed I'm wearing a different shirt and jeans and not the previous outfit I was wearing when I did the main part of Series 6, because the last part, the aftermath, is a little bit sensitive, and I've took me time before we decided to film it. I had to do a number of rewrites on like the script and the general storyboard on this part, because what I'm going to talk about is very, very sensitive, and it's a classic case of two wrongs don't make a right. I will talk about the Allies discovering the horrors of the Nazi regime, but before this, I have covered a number of battles on the Netherlands. But for all the fighting in the Netherlands themselves were left until the last days of World War II in the hands of the Germans, who, after the failure of Operation Market Garden and the Allies making priority of getting into Germany, left the Dutch people to starve under the Germans. For most of the war of occupation by the Germans in the Netherlands, it wasn't too bad, but still bad enough with the boot of the Nazis on your neck. But overall, it was kind of livable. After the failure of Operation Market Garden, things got much darker in the Netherlands, especially when the Dutch thought the Allies were basically there to liberate them from the Nazi regime, and the resistance kind of came out and up front. But after late 1944, the people of the Netherlands could see the attention of the Western Allies was in Germany and ending the war. By the end of April 1945, the situation in the Netherlands was horrendous, with huge proportions of the population on the edge of starvation, through back channels with the occupying Germans, who were now basically cut off. An agreement for Allied heavy bombers to drop food to the Netherlands was agreed, as long as the bombers stuck to their route. The flat guns in the western part of the Netherlands wouldn't engage these bombers. For the Royal Air Force, it was Lancasters and Halifax as Bomber Command under an Operation Manor. But the United States Army Air Force, 8th Air Force, was under the more stylish Operation Chowhound. This ran from the 1st of May to the 8th of May 1945 and dropped close to 12,000 tonnes of food to the Dutch people. The people of the Netherlands would be eternally grateful to the men of RAF Bomber Command and the US AAF's 8th Air Force. While I've been talking, I'm showing behind me a clip from Masters of the Air 100th Bomb Group B-17 Flying Fortress completing one of their food drop missions. It's the last part of this series though. It's going to be the most difficult to talk about. As the Allies from both East and West advanced through Germany and Eastern Europe, they started to discover terrible places that were the concentration camps of the Third Reich. We all should know that Nazi Germany murdered approximately 6 million Jews, but it did not stop there. There was another 6 million murdered, 3 million Soviet prisoners of war, 2 million European gypsies, 1 million others including homosexuals, the disabled, folks with mental problems, occasional prisoners of war, especially things like secret agents from Special Operations Executive, plus about 250,000 more Germans who just didn't agree with Hitler. Normally on the tables we have a selection of models from the various battles in the last year of World War II, but these have all been removed, as you can see, with just one model left on the table, that of a German railway G10 logistics wagon. Many of these wagons were used to move World War II German army logistically through the war, but many more had a more sinister use: the transportation of the Jews throughout Europe to their deaths. There was a thought that it was the records of wagons used by the German World War II railway system, the Reichsbahn, that helped calculate the numbers of victims. And I am sure it was looked at as details of German railway records were kept. But there were many ways to use to calculate the number of victims. Witness testimony, for instance, and some German records. Of course, Germans at the end of the war tried singing like canaries to save their bloody skins. But without the German Reichsbahn or railway system, the whole rotten procedure could not have happened on the scale that it did. Pictures often paint 1,000 words, and I'm showing what is some of the most disturbing images of World War II, shot by Hollywood director George Stevens while attached to the United States Army. Often film of the horrors of the Nazi regime was in grainy black and white, but in this case it's 16mm Technicolor that brings the sheer horror of what was filmed. Stevens was supposed to film the actual Battle of Berlin, but had got no access to the Soviet army, so he was told that the USA Army had found a camp not far away, and this was Dachau concentration camp. Called the United States Army Special Film Unit 186, the footage is part of a much longer film, though Stephen called this part Dante's Vision of Hell. There's nothing more needs to be said. Why the Nazi regime needs to be utterly, completely destroyed. The Nazi regime was responsible for hundreds of thousands of Western Allied casualties, 10 million Soviet soldiers, another 70 million Soviet civilians, plus many more from many countries, including 25% of every Polish person who was alive in 1939. Finally, I need to talk about horrors committed by the advancing Soviet troops coming across Eastern Europe and into Germany. Otherwise, the story of World War II in Europe is not complete. It is estimated, and no one really knows, that almost 2 million German women and girls were assaulted in the most heinous fashion by Soviet soldiers, some up to 60 and 70 times. Can you imagine that? And close to 250,000 died as a result of it. There were 100,000 incidents in Berlin alone. As historian Anthony Beaver described it as the greatest phenomenon of mass rape in history. There can be no justification for these incidents towards the end of World War II committed by a victorious army, and in some ways made the ending of the war in Europe even more horrifying than it already was. So, this brings the curtain down on the European part of the most destructive war in human history. Let's hope and pray this never happens again. And remember, it started with calling folks names like Untermensch, underpeople, and cockroaches in the 1930s. In the next series, we shall visit the Pacific for part 2 and the battles in the Southwest Pacific and the Southwest Campaign, meeting up with the Central Pacific Campaign for the battle for Okinawa, where it would result in 85,000 Allied casualties and terrible foretaste if they had to invade the Japanese home islands.